Commander Vextall floated in the command center of his massive ship. His 6 eyes focused on the blue planet spinning slowly below. The reconnaissance vessel had been watching Earth for 3 cycles now, and the reports were almost disappointing. In their simplicity? "Status report," Vextall commanded, his voice carrying through the bridge, where dozens of alien officers worked at glowing consoles. "The same as yesterday, Commander," replied his tactical officer, a thin creature with metallic skin. No defense satellites. No energy shields around their cities. No plasma weapons detected anywhere on the surface. They still use chemical propulsion for their primitive aircraft. Vextall clicked his mandibles in what his species considered amusement. After conquering 17 worlds in the past decade, Earth looked like it might be their easiest victory. Yet, the humans seemed to spend most of their time tending to plants and caring for other creatures that served no apparent military purpose. "What about their population centers?" he asked. "Concentrated in structures they call cities. No hardened bunkers. No underground military complexes. They actually keep other living beings inside their homes, for no logical reason we can determine." Far below on Earth's surface, Dr. Kim Soo had no idea that aliens were studying her world. She sat in her small laboratory at Seoul National University, watching video footage of the animal behavior tests she had been running for the past 6 months. Something remarkable was happening, but she could not quite explain what it was. "Min, come look at this," she called to her research partner, who was sitting at another computer nearby. Lee Min rolled his chair over to Kim Soo's desk and studied the brain scan images on her screen. The neural activity patterns were unlike anything they had seen before in animal studies. The test subjects, a group of domestic dogs, were showing connectivity between brain regions that should not have been possible. "The neural pathway connections are strengthening," Min said slowly, trying to make sense of the data. "It's like they're becoming more, aware." Kim Soo nodded, her eyes bright with excitement and confusion. "Look at this footage from yesterday." She played a video showing the dogs in their testing area. Instead of the random, individual behavior they expected, the animals moved together with purpose. When one dog discovered food hidden in a corner, it immediately signaled to the others. Not with normal barking or tail wagging, but with complex vocalizations they had never heard before. "They're communicating in ways we don't understand," Kim Soo whispered, 300 kilometers away in the coastal city of Busan. Marine biologist Park Ji was having his own mysterious experience. He spent his days studying dolphins and whales in the waters around Korea. But lately his research had taken a strange turn. Park Ji sat in his underwater observation station, watching a pod of bottlenose dolphins through reinforced glass. The creatures swam in perfect formations, their movements coordinated like a military unit. When he played different sound frequencies through the water, they responded not with the simple behaviors documented in textbooks, but with complex patterns that seemed almost like language. "Computer, record observation log," he said to his equipment. "Day 43 of unusual dolphin behavior. The pod is demonstrating problem-solving abilities far beyond normal parameters. Yesterday they worked together to create a whirlpool that captured fish in a way I have never seen before. Today, they are responding to my test signals with sounds that appear to have grammatical structure." He paused the recording and leaned closer to the glass. One of the dolphins, a large female he had been studying for years, approached the window and looked directly at him. Her eyes held an intelligence that made him uncomfortable. It was as if she was studying him as much as he was studying her. In the mountains outside the small city of Gangneung, Forest Ranger Choban walked his usual patrol route through the pine forests. After 15 years of this job, he knew every tree, every trail, and every animal in his territory. But something had changed in recent weeks, and it was making him nervous. The wolves that lived in the deeper parts of the forest were behaving strangely. Instead of avoiding human areas as they normally did, they had been moving closer to the towns, not in a threatening way, but with what seemed like curiosity. Chobin had found their tracks near hiking trails, arranged in patterns that looked almost deliberate. Even more puzzling were the domestic dogs in the nearby villages. The animals that had once been content to sleep in the sun and beg for food scraps were now alert and watchful. They gathered in groups and seemed to communicate with each other in ways their owners found disturbing. "It's like they're waiting for something," one elderly farmer had told Chobin the previous day. "My dog hasn't slept properly in weeks. He just sits by the window at night, watching the sky." Siobin stopped walking and looked up through the forest canopy. The afternoon sky was clear and blue, with only a few white clouds drifting overhead. Everything looked normal, but he could not shake the feeling that something was watching him. From above, high in orbit, Commander Vextel made his final decision. "Signal the invasion fleet. We begin the assault at dawn." The morning sun was just beginning to rise over Seoul when the first alien ships appeared in the sky. They were not the massive warships that people might have expected from science fiction movies. Instead, they looked like giant crystal teardrops that fell silently from the clouds and landed in empty fields outside the city. Captain Nam Ho of the Korean Defense Forces had been awake all night, watching the radar screens that showed dozens of unknown objects entering Earth's atmosphere. Now, he crouched behind a concrete barrier, about 1 kilometer from the nearest landing site, holding binoculars in his steady hands. "Command, this is Alpha Team," he spoke into his radio. "I can see movement inside the closest vessel. The walls appear to be transparent." Beside him, his German shepherd Max pressed low against the ground. The dog had been Namho's partner for 3 years, trained for bomb detection and crowd control. But this morning Max was acting differently. His ears were flat against his head and a low growl rumbled continuously in his throat. The sound was deeper and more threatening than Namho had ever heard from him before. "All units, maintain defensive positions," Namho radioed to the soldiers spread out around the landing zone. "Wait for my command before engaging." The crystalline walls of the alien ship began to glow with soft blue light. Then, without any sound, a section of the wall simply disappeared. Strange figures began to emerge from the opening. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but they were taller and thinner, with skin that looked like polished metal. Each one carried a weapon that resembled a silver rod with lights blinking along its length. Namho expected the aliens to advance slowly and cautiously, perhaps trying to communicate or demand surrender. Instead, they spread out in a perfect line and began walking directly toward Seoul. Their movements were confident, almost casual, as if they were taking a pleasant morning stroll rather than beginning an invasion. "Contact front," Namho shouted into his radio. "Enemy forces advancing on the city. All units, engage at will." The battle that followed was unlike anything the alien invaders had experienced in their previous conquests. Korean soldiers fought with determination and skill that surprised the enemy forces. But something else was happening that made the alien commander, General Zaxpal, pause in confusion as reports came in from around the planet. "Sir," reported his lieutenant, standing at a glowing communication console aboard the command ship, "our advanced teams are reporting unusual resistance, not just from the humans. Large quadrupeds are coordinating attacks against our ground units. Aerial creatures are interfering with our communications equipment." General Zaxpal turned away from the holographic display showing troop movements around Earth. His 4 arms moved in gestures of confusion. "Explain. What do you mean by quadrupeds?" "The humans keep other creatures as companions, sir. We observed this during reconnaissance, but these animals are not behaving as expected. They are attacking our soldiers in organized groups. Some of our units report being surrounded by packs of 4-legged creatures that seem to understand military tactics. In Seoul, Dr. Kim Soo was helping evacuate her laboratory when she noticed something that made her stop and stare in amazement. She had spent years studying animal behavior, but what she was seeing in Namsan Park defied everything she knew about how animals should react to danger and chaos, instead of running away in panic, as they should have done when the alien ships landed. The animals in the park were organizing themselves. Hundreds of crows had gathered in the sky above the trees, flying in tight formations, like military aircraft. They were not making the random cong sounds that crows normally made. Instead, they were producing a complex series of calls that sounded almost like language. On the ground, stray dogs that usually fought over food scraps and territory were working together. Kim Soo watched in fascination as they moved through the park in coordinated groups. The larger dogs took positions at the front, while smaller ones spread out to the sides. Their formation looked exactly like the patrol patterns used by human soldiers. Min, are you seeing this? She called to her research partner, who was helping elderly people evacuate from a nearby apartment building. Lee. Min looked up from assisting an old man with a walking stick and followed Kim Soo's pointing finger toward the park. His mouth fell open in surprise. His own cat, Luna, was sitting on a low wall beside a dozen other cats from the neighborhood. The animals were making sounds he had never heard before, a series of chirps and trills that seemed to carry meaning. Luna never talks to other cats, Min said quietly. She usually hides when strangers come near our apartment. But now Luna and the other cats were clearly communicating with each other through vocalizations that sounded nothing like normal cat noises. As Min watched, Luna made a specific series of sounds, and immediately all the other cats scattered in different directions. Within minutes, they had positioned themselves at strategic points around the park, as if they were setting up some kind of surveillance network. This isn't normal animal behavior, Min whispered to Kim Soo as explosions echoed from the direction where human soldiers were fighting the aliens. Animals don't organize like this. They don't work together across different species. Kim Soo nodded, her mind racing as she tried to understand what she was witnessing. We need to get to the mountains and set up temporary equipment. If animals are somehow coordinating their behavior on this scale, we need to document it, as they helped more civilians evacuate toward safer areas outside the city. Neither scientist realized that they were witnessing the first signs of something that would change the course of the invasion and the future of life on Earth. On the third morning since the aliens had arrived, Park Ji crouched in a concrete bunker built into the cliffs overlooking Busan Harbor. The marine biologist had never expected to become part of a military operation, but the invasion had changed everything. His years of studying ocean life had suddenly become valuable for reasons no one could have predicted. Dr. Park, we have another report from the naval patrol boats, said Lieutenant Kang, a young officer who looked like he had not slept in days. He held a radio in his shaking hands, his face pale with disbelief. What are they saying now? Park Ji asked, though he suspected the answer would be just as impossible as the previous reports. Sir, the dolphins, they're not just following our ships anymore. They're leading attacks against the alien submarines. Captain Lee says the dolphins are using their echolocation in ways we've never seen before, like living sonar weapons that can actually damage enemy vessels. Park Ji nodded slowly. After studying these creatures for 15 years, he was beginning to understand that everything scientists thought they knew about dolphin intelligence had been completely wrong. The dolphins were not just smart animals. They were something much more than that. Tell Captain Lee to follow the dolphins' lead, Park Ji said into the radio. Don't try to direct them. Let them show us what they want to do. 200 kilometers away in the mountains outside Gangneung, Forest Ranger Cho Bin was witnessing something that made him question his own sanity. He had spent the last 2 days guiding refugee families through the forest trails to safety. But now he was seeing things that belonged in fantasy stories rather than real life. The forest itself had come alive. bears that should have been in deep winter sleep had emerged from their dens weeks early. But they were not groggy and confused as bears normally were when awakened before spring. Instead, they moved with purpose and intelligence that Chobin had never seen in wild animals. Yesterday, he had watched a group of wild boars coordinate an attack against an alien patrol. The boars had not simply charged blindly as wild pigs usually did when threatened. Instead, they had surrounded the aliens in a perfect circle, attacking from multiple directions, with timing that would have impressed human military commanders. Even more strange were the birds, crows, hawks, and eagles that normally competed for territory were now working together. They dove at alien soldiers' heads, targeting their communication equipment and weapons with precision that seemed impossible for animals operating on instinct alone. This cannot be happening, Chobin whispered to himself as he watched a family of deer lead a group of lost children safely through the forest, guiding them around alien patrols with knowledge that the deer should not have possessed. In a temporary command post set up in an abandoned school building, Captain Namho was having the strangest briefing of his military career. He stood in front of a map of Seoul, pointing out enemy positions to his human soldiers. But sitting in the front row, paying careful attention to every word, were 6 military dogs, including his partner Max. The alien forces have established 3 main checkpoints here. Here, and here, Namho said, pointing at the map with a wooden stick. We need to coordinate simultaneous strikes to prevent them from calling for reinforcements. Max made a low, whining sound and tilted his head toward the map. Then he walked over to the wall and used his nose to point at a different location. The other dogs followed, each one indicating positions that Namho had not marked. Sir, said Sergeant Park, one of Namho's most experienced soldiers. I think the dogs are trying to show us something. Namho looked at Max, who was staring directly into his eyes, with an intensity that was almost human. For a moment that lasted several seconds, Namho felt as if he could actually understand what Max was thinking. The dog was not just indicating random locations on the map. He was suggesting a tactical approach that would be more effective than the plan Namho had developed. Change the plan, Namho said quietly. We'll follow the route the dogs are suggesting. In a refugee camp 50 kilometers outside Seoul, Dr. Kim Soo sat in a small tent with portable scientific equipment spread across a folding table. She had been taking measurements of brain activity in humans and animals for the past 2 days, and the results were beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. Min, look at these readings, she called to her research partner, who was helping distribute food to families who had fled the city. The electromagnetic patterns between humans and animals, they're synchronizing. Li Min left the food distribution line and squeezed into the cramped tent. On Kim Soo's computer screen, he could see brainwave patterns from humans and various animals. The patterns were beginning to match each other in ways that should have been impossible. What does this mean? Min asked. It means that somehow, the stress of the invasion is creating connections between human and animal minds that have never existed before, Kim Soo said, her voice filled with excitement and fear. It's like a planetary neural network is activating. All the living creatures on Earth are beginning to think and act as one unified organism. Similar reports were coming in from around the world. In Africa, elephants were using their intelligence to solve complex problems that helped human refugees escape alien capture. In cities across America and Europe, house cats were demonstrating coordination skills that amazed their owners. Working together to disable alien surveillance equipment, the bond between humans and animals was deepening, beyond anything science had previously documented, creating a form of cooperation that the alien invaders had never encountered on any other world they had conquered. By the 6th day of the invasion, Commander Vextel stood in his command ship high above Earth, staring at reports that made no sense. His species had conquered 17 different worlds, using the same strategy of overwhelming technological superiority. But Earth was different. Earth was fighting back in ways that no military academy in the galaxy had ever taught him to handle. "Commander," his tactical officer said with trembling in his voice, "we have lost contact with 12 more ground units in the last hour. The humans are not defeating us with better weapons. They are using ... everything." Vextal turned away from the holographic display that showed his forces retreating from major population centers across the planet. "Explain what you mean by everything." "Sir, our soldiers report being attacked by creatures of all sizes, not just the humans with their primitive weapons, but also four-legged animals, flying creatures, even tiny insects that somehow disable our electronic equipment. It is as if the entire planet has declared war against us." The alien commander clicked his mandibles in frustration. "How do we fight an enemy that includes every living thing on the planet?" he demanded of his staff. None of them had an answer. Far below on Earth's surface, the impossible was becoming reality. Off the coast of Jeju Island, Park Ji stood on the deck of a Korean naval vessel, communicating with creatures he had studied for years but never truly understood until now. A pod of orcas swam alongside the ship, their massive black and white bodies cutting through the water with purpose that went far beyond normal animal behavior. There, Park Ji pointed toward the horizon, where an alien submarine had just surfaced. "The enemy vessel is trying to establish a communication relay with their main fleet." The largest orca in the pod, a female that Park Ji had been tracking for 5 years, turned her head toward him. For a moment that seemed to last forever, Park Ji felt a connection with the creature that was deeper than scientific observation. He could sense what she was thinking, and somehow she could understand his thoughts as well, without any signal from the humans. The orcas dove beneath the surface and swam toward the alien submarine. What happened next defied everything Park Ji knew about marine biology. The orcas coordinated their attack with precision that would have impressed submarine warfare specialists. They rammed the enemy vessel at specific structural weak points while using their sonar in ways that seemed impossible. The alien submarine's hull began to crack under the assault, but more importantly, their electronic systems started failing. The orca's natural echolocation had somehow been enhanced to disrupt enemy technology. Within minutes, the submarine was dead in the water, its crew scrambling to abandon ship in the ruins of Seoul. Captain Namho led his men through streets filled with rubble from alien bombardments. But his unit was unlike any military force in human history. Running alongside the human soldiers were dozens of dogs, each one moving with intelligence and tactical awareness that amazed even their handlers. Max stayed close to Namho's side, but the German Shepherd was no longer just following orders. He was anticipating enemy movements with accuracy that seemed supernatural. When alien patrols tried to set ambushes, Max would alert the human soldiers minutes before the enemies were even visible. "Left side, Building 3, Namho whispered into his radio after Max had frozen and pointed toward a seemingly empty structure. Sure enough, thermal scans confirmed alien soldiers hiding exactly where Max had indicated. The other dogs in the unit were displaying similar abilities, turning guerrilla warfare into something that completely baffled the invaders. Across the city, Li Min crouched in the basement of a damaged apartment building, surrounded by cats that had once been ordinary house pets. His own cat Luna sat in front of him, making soft chirping sounds that Min somehow understood as clearly as if she were speaking Korean. The cats had become living intelligence-gathering units, slipping through alien lines to observe enemy positions and report back with information that human spies could never have obtained. They moved through sewers, climbed walls, and hid in places where alien soldiers would never think to look. "Luna says there are 15 aliens in the building across the street." Min spoke into his radio, still amazed that he was having conversations with his pet cat. "They have established a communication post on the 4th floor. Within an hour, human special forces had used the cat's intelligence to eliminate the enemy position without losing a single soldier. In the mountains outside Gangneung, Forest Ranger Choban witnessed scenes that belonged in ancient legends rather than modern warfare. Massive tigers that should not have existed in Korean forests were coordinating attacks with human special forces units. The great cats moved through the trees like shadows, surrounding alien patrols with stealth that their technology could not detect. Above the forest canopy, birds of prey struck alien aircraft from the sky. Hawks and eagles dove at flying vehicles with timing so perfect that enemy pilots could not react fast enough to avoid collision. Even more disturbing for the aliens were reports of insects swarming their equipment with what appeared to be tactical awareness. Billions of bees, ants, and other tiny creatures somehow worked together to disable alien technology through methods that the invaders could not understand or counter. Electronics failed when insects crawled into circuit boards. Communication systems went dead when swarms of flying insects interfered with signal transmissions. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to fight humans with superior technology. Instead, they found themselves at war with millions of years of evolutionary adaptation that was now guided by human intelligence and unified by a mysterious connection that turned the entire planet into a single, coordinated defense system. 2 weeks after the first alien ships had landed on Earth, the last enemy vessel disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving behind only scattered wreckage and a planet that had been forever changed. Commander Vextel's final transmission to the Galactic Fleet was filled with terror and confusion. Do not approach the third planet of this system. His voice crackled across alien communication networks throughout the galaxy. This is not a normal world. The inhabitants have formed an alliance with every living creature on their planet. They fight as one organism. We have never encountered anything like this. Mark this world as forbidden territory. Other alien commanders, listening to the broadcast, could hardly believe what they were hearing. In 300 years of galactic conquest, no world had ever forced an invasion fleet to retreat completely. But Earth had done exactly that, and not through superior technology or massive armies, but through something that no military strategist had ever prepared for. Dr. Kim Soo stood in her laboratory at Seoul National University, which had been rebuilt in record time with help from construction crews that included both humans and animals working side by side. She studied readings on her computer screen that would revolutionize everything scientists thought they knew about consciousness and intelligence. The neural connections are still there, she told Li Min, who was reviewing data at the desk beside her. The electromagnetic patterns between human and animal brains that developed during the invasion have not disappeared. If anything, they are getting stronger. Li Min looked up from his work and glanced at Luna, who was sitting on a windowsill, watching their conversation. The cat's green eyes showed an awareness that was impossible to ignore. When Kim Soo mentioned the neural connections, Luna actually nodded her head as if she understood every word. "We're not the same species we were before," Kim Soo said quietly. "None of us are. The crisis awakened something in both humans and animals that has changed us permanently." Luna jumped down from the windowsill and walked over to the computer. She placed her paw on the keyboard and typed a single letter, Y. Then she looked directly at Kim Soo and made a soft chirping sound that both scientists somehow understood meant yes. 300 kilometers away on the coast, near Busan Park, Ji worked in a new type of marine research station that had been built partially underwater and partially on the surface. Through reinforced glass walls, he could see dolphins and whales swimming in organized patrols around the harbor. Daily report to Maritime Defense Headquarters. He spoke into his recording equipment. The cetacean patrol units continue to monitor our coastal waters with efficiency that exceeds human surveillance capabilities. Today, they detected and investigated 3 suspicious underwater objects that our sonar systems had completely missed. A large bottlenose dolphin approached the underwater window and tapped gently on the glass with her nose. Park Ji walked over and placed his hand against the barrier. For several seconds, he felt the now familiar sensation of mental connection. That allowed him to understand the dolphin's thoughts without words. "She says there are no threats in the immediate area," Park Ji reported. "The whale pods are establishing permanent residence patterns that will provide continuous protection for shipping lanes." The intelligence of marine mammals had not just awakened during the crisis. It had evolved to its full potential, creating guardians of Earth's oceans who were willing partners rather than wild animals to be studied in Seoul. Captain Namho walked through the headquarters of what was now called the Integrated Defense Force. Human soldiers worked at desks alongside dogs who had learned to operate specially designed computer interfaces with their paws. The sight would have seemed impossible just a month ago. But now it was simply the new reality. Max sat beside Namho's desk, wearing a special harness that allowed him to communicate through a device that translated his thoughts into text on a computer screen. The German Shepherd was no longer just a military working dog. He was Namho's partner in ways that transcended the old boundaries between human and animal. Intelligence report from Sector 7 appeared on Max's communication device. Enemy surveillance equipment detected and neutralized by feline reconnaissance units. Area secure for civilian movement. Namho smiled and scratched Max behind the ears. "Good work, partner. Send confirmation to all units that the evacuation route is clear." The military capabilities of Earth had evolved far beyond anything that had existed before the invasion. Human intelligence, combined with animal senses and instincts, had created a defense system that no enemy could penetrate or understand. In the mountains, outside Gangnam, Cho Ben worked with wildlife that were no longer wild in the traditional sense. Bears, wolves, deer, and countless smaller animals had become conscious guardians of the forest, protecting the land and its people with intelligence that matched their natural strength and speed. A family of tigers that had somehow appeared in the Korean mountains during the crisis now patrolled the borders with China, working alongside human border guards to monitor for any remaining alien activity. Birds carried messages between human settlements faster than electronic communication systems. Even insects had become part of a vast surveillance network that covered every square meter of the country. The invasion had awakened something that had been sleeping in Earth's biosphere for millions of years. A planetary consciousness had emerged from the crisis, connecting all living things in a bond that would carry them beyond Earth and out to the stars. As humanity began to develop new technologies for space travel, they knew they would not be going alone. The galaxy had never seen anything like what Earth had become. They were no longer just one species reaching for the stars, but an entire world working as one voice, one family, one unstoppable force that would ensure Earth's children were never again mistaken for a defenseless species.